You think you got everything organized and it didn't.
All right,
Y'all have been there.
thumbs up.
Okay.
My name is David Ulbrich, and this is September 7th, 2007. What is your full name, sir?
John W. Oliver Jr., but they've always called me Jack because my dad was a military officer, National Guard, and that was John W. Oliver Sr., and so for no confusion, I was Jack from the time I was born until this date.
Very good. When and where were you born?
I was born on a farm in Belton, just 5 miles out of Belton, Texas, right in the middle of Texas. Born at home in my mother's bed. And that was September 21st, 1924.
And what squadron did you serve in?
I was in the 513th. Colonel Ed Smith, well, he was a major when I got there, was our commander.
Tell me a little bit about life before you joined the military, either during the Great Depression or when the war started. What was that like?
Okay. As I said, I was born 21st September 1924, and I was raised on a farm. We had about a 250-acre farm. And my dad was the commander of the National Guard in my hometown. And, of course, a big Democrat and kind of ran the Democratic things in our town those days. And, of course, he thought we ought to be able to do anything on the farm that had to be done. That's from chopping cuckleburs and sunflowers or anything else, to picking eggs, cleaning up chicken sheds, just doing anything in the world as little kids. And we did that. And everybody took their turn doing chores in the house. And he was recalled as this went along for years, and we did our turns helping around the farm. I was the oldest boy. I had 2 younger brothers. One was 3 years younger, and the other one was 18 years younger. I had a sister that was 1 year older. And, of course, that threw me into the pocket of my dad being gone all the time. If he wasn't working with the National Guard or the reserves somewhere, he was working with the Department of Agriculture, helping them out. Because he and Bob Pogue, who used to be one of our great congressmen in the United States that took care of all the lakes and rivers and everything, around the country, was Bob Pogue. But in 1935, my dad was called back to active duty. So I was, at that time, what would I have been? 11 years old. And my dad bought a brand new Alishammer tractor and said, "Jack, you're in charge." And he took off. He'd come back occasionally to check me and see how things were going, but he had the idea that we should be raised on the farm, go to the same schools he went to in Belton, Texas, graduate from the same high school. And so that's what we did. When he left, and left before long, I was 12, and I'm running a 250-acre farm till I finished high school. In my senior year in high school, I received a principal appointee for West Point, because my dad, of course, knew the politicians. At least that's what I thought. And my grades were fair. And that summer, I had a ruptured appendix and nearly died. So I had to turn in the appointment and couldn't go, and they didn't operate on me. Back in those days, they had none of the drugs that they give you now, and penicillin and all that sort of thing. So they packed me down the ice, and I survived. I don't know why. I even had one of those out-of-body experiences. People look down their nose when you say you did, where you rise up and you see the people. And my dad's telling the doctor's telling my dad, well, he's going to die any minute, and you might as well be prepared for it. And I said to myself, no, I'm not going to die. And I didn't. And for some reason or other, went down. Of course, maybe y'all don't believe things like this. I don't know what I do either, but I'm here. And so I came back, and as a result, of course, I lost the West Point appointment, but my dad had gone to A&M, and of course, that was fine with me. I signed up to go to A&M, went ahead and finished high school, Belton High School, and went down to Texas A&M, and I spent a year there. And by then I'm well again and everything's fine. And a neighbor had taken over the farm, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I said, Dad, I want to as soon as I'm 18, I want to join the Army. And because, you know, in those days we were all very patriotic. We wanted to find. He said, no, you're going to stay at A&M and finish. I'm going to make you a lieutenant. And I said, no, Dad, you know. So I found out at A&M at the end of your freshman year and you become a sophomore, you are enlisted in the Enlisted Reserve Corps if you want to go into advanced ROTC. So I told my dad, I said, Dad, I have to enlist in the Enlisted Reserve Corps so I can go into advanced ROTC training. And of course, fine, he said, just as soon as you're 18, I'll swear you in. So he came up from Fort Sand and swore me in, and I'm in Enlisted Reserve Corps, and I'm still down at A&M. So the Sergeant Major down there, or the Commandant of Cadets, knew that I was interested in becoming a pilot, and I'd already flown 60 hours in an interstate trainer, and at a little field just out of Bryan, Texas, and I just knew I was going to be a pilot. So, but I went down, took the exam, made straight. Of course, taking engineering to A&M, you had a freshman year prepared you for the straight stay 9 exams you took, straight 9s, man. I had it aced, and I said, boy, I'm going to be a pilot. So anyway, I went in for my interview with the young doctor and the old Moss-Eaton sergeant, and he said, well, he said, Mr. Oliver, he said, we've got you lined up for navigation school. And I said, no, I want to be a pilot. He said, you're not tall enough. I said, I'm exactly 5'4", and I'm in the Corps, and I know how tall I am. Don't get too smart with these sergeants, you know. But anyway, he said, no, he said, you're going to go to navigation school. You're too short to be a pilot. And I said, well, is there any other way I can get overseas faster and still get a commission? Because I knew my dad would kill me if I didn't get a commission. And he said, well, you could go to Bombardier School. That's 90 days. He said, actually, you can go to OCS if you want to, but you got to go back into the Army and all the process and everything, and that'll take you a year. But he said, hey, we'll get you in Bombardier School. Just, you know, put me down. So I signed up. Little did I know that the sergeant knew something I didn't know. The first class of Bombardier navigators was going to be 4313, and when we got to they sent me to San Angelo Bombardier School. First thing the Commandant said was, gentlemen, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you're at the best Army Air Corps cadet school in the United States. The bad news is you're going to have to take navigation. So, then it dawned on me what the sergeant had done to me. He was determined I was going to be a navigator. So anyway, I went ahead and I took Bombardier training, and they never did get the airplanes or the equipment because the war was on, you know, and everything. So we finished all of our Bombardier training, got our wings, and they sent half the class that was going overseas down to San Marcos, and we finished our celestial shots and got our navigation stuff out of the way and became full-fledged navigators, got our wings. And the kids that were going to stay and be instructors, because, you know, the war's on, they've got to have instructors, half our class, well, they went to Selma, Alabama at the nice Rolls-Royce school and things like that, and stayed there. And I was 23rd of October 1943. I was commissioned at San Angelo, and of course went on down for a few weeks for my navigation. And then I already had my orders to go to Salt Lake City, where the officers would get together, the pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, and navigator would get together for a couple of weeks, which we did. And my pilot was a fellow named Oriel Johnson from a little town called Aiken, Minnesota. Our co-pilot was Mormon from Utah, a great guy, absolutely fantastic guy. And the navigator was a fellow named Pollock from a real smart guy from Chicago. So I didn't really mind too much not being the navigator and being the bombardier on the crew. You know, it's a great bunch of officers. We stayed there 2 weeks and went down to Alamogordo, New Mexico, to get with the men that were for my crew. It's 4 of us and six of our men. And we had an old tech sergeant engineer, an old tech sergeant radio operator, and a relatively young Staff Sergeant, Waste Gunner Assistant Engineer, another relatively young waste gunner, and a ball turret operator and a tail turret operator. And our tail turret operator was probably as close to me as anybody else on the crew. He was a real fine young fellow from Rhode Island. And I suppose, if you want to know who your closest guy on the crew was, he was probably my closest friend on the crew. And in those days, it doesn't make a difference whether you were an officer and they said on your crew, you were close. I mean, it was like a family, really close.
And what was the tail gunner's name?
Wally Trust.
Wally Trust.
And I'll always remember him about several things. Of course, one thing is he gambled a little bit. And he had made a little money, and I had bought a car, and I was broke when I met my wife. So we're in training at Charleston, South Carolina. We left Alamogordo, went to Charleston for the last month of training before we went overseas. And I got in there the 30th day of January, was looking for something to eat, stopped at a little old delicatessen, and there was a nice looking little old gal in there. By George, I didn't get a date with her on the first day of January, the next day, and married her on the 30th day. Now, if you want somebody that nearly died, my dad by then was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, which is like being a 4-star general today. And my mother just had a fit. But I've been married to that girl now, and y'all have met her, for 63 years, and I think it's going to last, So anyway, we stayed there for 2 or 3 weeks, did our crew training at Charleston, and went down to Cuba for a week. I got married 2 days later, went to Cuba for a week, came back, stayed 2 days, and then we were sent to Mitchell Field on Long Island to pick up our new airplane, B-24H, one of the new ones with the nose turrets and all that kind of stuff on it.
And what year would
That was in February, late February of '44.
All right.
Okay.
Very good.
And of course the whole crew went, and really they said the rest of y'all can get lost for 3 or 4 days because it's a terrible thing to tell people when they're going overseas and you're in New York City, But so we called the girls right quick overnight. They're up on a train, and we got them a room in one of the hotels there. And so we, the pilot, co-pilot, the engineer, had to check out the airplane, fly it around, But they didn't need the rest of us, so we all went downtown and stayed in one of the hotels and had a nice 2 or 3 days with our wives and friends, and then went back out and got in our B-24 and headed south. Went to Trinidad, and actually we went to Puerto Rico first, and then to Trinidad, and then on down to one of the countries, I can't remember the name now, in South America, and then on to Belém on the Amazon, and then jumped across to Dakar on the African side, up to Marrakech in Morocco, up on the mountains, and then over to Tripoli. And we stayed there not very long, 3 or 4 days, I guess. Long enough for one of the guys there one of the natives to try to steal all of our instruments, and we caught him, and he didn't make it. But anyway, enough of that story. And we got everything fixed back up again and took on off, went up to San Pancrazio, where our group was in Italy. And we landed in the afternoon, middle of the afternoon, and, set up, we didn't have any place to stay. We set up our pup tent, got together, and later on we scavenged and got all kinds of stuff, built us some nice areas to live. But it was pretty bad there the first month or two. But anyway, we landed, and as I say, and we're messing around there trying to set up our shelter halves and all that stuff. And the ops officer came out and said, "Sergeant here's got something y'all say." And he came out and he said, "Of course, you new guys are going to be doing some training tomorrow," but he said, I'm putting up the assignments for tomorrow's mission. And said, you might want to check it. Because some of y'all, because we are so many people, we've lost so many people, or some of you may have to fly with some other crews. So I went over to check the board, And I'm signed up as a guy named Darwin Michaels, who's one of our 513th directors, but he couldn't make it. He's not well this time. And they had me lined up under his crew as a navigator. And so I called my pilot. I said, Johnson, I'm signed up to fly tomorrow morning as navigator with this fella Michaels. And he said, hell you are. He said, you're my bombardier and you're not flying with anybody else. And about that time, the staff sergeant was the operations sergeant, stepped out of the tent there and he said, Lieutenant, is that fellow's name Oliver? And he said, yes. He said, well, he's flying with him tomorrow. So I did, and I flew my first 5 missions with Darwin Michaels and his crew as a navigator. And of course, it was probably as rough as a fellow in the infantry, you know, with their trenches that they dug out on the front lines. And you lose your best buddy, you know, and there you are, you're sharing a trench together. It really affected me greatly because I'm having to borrow his navigation bag and tools and everything he had, and then had to go set where he was killed the day before, 2 days before by then, and fly those missions. It was pretty rough for a young kid, and I was a pretty young kid at that time. You know.
Did that other crew? Did they accept you quickly?
Absolutely, and it was really unusual. It was hard to do, and we're friends to this day.
Because in the infantry, when they get the replacements, the old veterans would not want to get to know the young guys that well because they'd be worried they'd get killed the next day, and so you know. But you just fit right in.
I'd seen that happen, and I didn't. It took me. I hate to admit it, because of my ego, but it took me months to realize how much. Well, first, how important the pilot was, how really important he was to the crew, to the mission, the whole bit. Really important the pilot was. But next, how important the navigator was. The pilot had no time to navigate. And after you'd been on a few missions, you found out why. When that old B-24 lost an engine, or some guy got shot up on the airplane, that pilot was busy, you know, with the airplane trying to keep it in the air, he and the co-pilot.
Well, I'd heard it drove like a Mack truck. That's what people said.
That's what they claim.
And there's no power.
They had no time, you know, and the automatic pilots never worked anyway, and, you know. So they're too busy trying to keep it in the air. Took both people, the pilot and the co-pilot, to keep the thing in the air. And so they depended on that navigator to get them home, or to get them to Switzerland, or to get them to someplace where they could land. You know, if they were shot up so bad. And it took a while for it to dawn on me, and I hate to admit it, how important the navigator was to the crew. And I think that's the reason that I was accepted, you know. And of course, they found out right quick that I wanted to be a navigator anyway, you know, but that lasted 5 times, and my pilot had flown his first mission in with other people, and it just raised so much heck about it that they put me back on his crew, which is what they should have done. But by that time, the squadron commander, Ed Smith, that I was talking about, Major Smith, found out that I was dual rated. So he said, well, every time I fly and lead, I'm want him with me, because if I lose a bombardier or I lose a navigator, I'll have one. And then we flew with our group commander, T.Q. Graff, Colonel Graff, and so he took me along. And he said, what you doing with him here? What you doing with that lieutenant? And he said, well, and he explained to him, you know, if we lose a bombardier or a navigator, we've still got another navigator here that can get us home. Oh, okay, fine. So then I flew with Colonel Graff 2 or 3 times because of that very same reason, because he just had some insurance. And it finally dawned on me how important the navigator really was to the pilots. But there was one thing between navigators and pilots. Policy. Damn your hide, quit giving me a 1 degree correction or a half a degree. And I found out it really wasn't that important. 1 degree or half a degree, you know, you can correct a whole lot as you go down the track coming home. So anyway, that was my first mission. I flew 50 missions over there, about half of them as a navigator. On my 16th mission, on a milk run up in northern Italy, it looked like it was only 3 or 4 88 millimeter shots. Nearly blew the nose off of our airplane and messed me up pretty good, but not bad enough to where I couldn't. A week later, I'm back flying again. So I got my first Purple Heart on my 16th mission, and a week later, I'm back flying again. And then I continued flying all my missions until my 30th mission. I got hit again over Zagreb, Yugoslavia, isn't it? In those days, it was Yugoslavia. And right down the edge of Austria. And just by that time, see, remember, and I'm sure some of the guys have told you, we had darn little fighter escort. I don't know whether y'all picked that up or. We had very little fighter escort, and
about what year, or about what?
This was from February of '44 to July. So I came home in July of '44, and the reason I came home so fast is because I flew both bombardier and navigator, and every time I turned around, I was flying, you know. So you know. We're back up to where I got shot on the 16th and on the 30th. And,
yes.
And talking about the ME-262 coming in on head-on, and I looked out and saw him.
Is that the
Messerschmitt, German Messerschmitt 260? It's first jet, twin-engine jet that they had, and I thought he was a P-38 just making a head-on and then going to sweep up over us to altitude and come back and protect us. And I looked again, and heck, here they started laying down the 20 millimeter cannons. Bop, 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 you know. And the last 2 shells, one hit right under me, under the bomb. And I saw them coming, and y'all say, heck, you can't see? No, you can't. Heck, you can't see. There's something about it in a situation like that, like old Steve, like Yeager, you know, the great pilot, could see everything from miles away. It's a funny thing. I could see those things coming and exploding. And they say it's impossible you could do it, but did. And one of them got right on. I saw them coming, and I knelt down right over the bomb site as fast as I could. And it exploded. We had a plate about like this on the bomb site and exploded under it. Blew the bomb site, plate and the bomb site and everything up in my face. They took the last piece out of my face last month. I carried a piece of flak right through, right in there. They kept it getting infected and everything. We thought it was just being like young people have acne, things. But it was pretty good size and like a cocoon formed there. And they took it out, and I had a piece down through my nose, through my teeth, and I had one piece in my eye, and bled like a stuck pig. And of course, flight surgeon, because I had a piece in my eye, took me to rest camp with him for a week to make sure that I didn't get excited and hurt myself. But our Zagreb was sort of in the middle of what we call the Golden Arch. And I don't know whether you've heard this from anyone else or not, but Golden Arch started in Marseille and Nice and went to Munich, Augsburg, Star, Regensburg, Wiener Neustadt, Bratislava, a little out of the arch, not much, and on down to Budapest and Zagreb, and down to the Ploesti oil fields and Bucharest. And those were our rough targets. And I still think, although most people think that Ploesti was the worst, I still think that the Star, Regensburg, Wiener Neustadt was our worst area. Man, I tell you what, you'd go in there, and you could. The flak was so bad it looked like you could let your gear down and taxi on it. It was just terrible. They'd lay down a barrage, and you had to fly through it.
A box, basically.
A box.
They had you, and of course, as bombardier, you're basically keeping the plane level. It's flying straight.
Try on the IFP from initial point over until you drop your bombs. It's really, and you're bouncing around all over the place,
And
really
they have you locked in on their your elevation, your altitude.
Yeah, 23,000, 24,000, like that area. And so What really made me, I guess, think it was worse than Pulaski. Although I went over Pulaski 6 times. That's a lot of times. And every time it was bad over Pulaski. But my best friend, I went through Bombardier School and such, navigation, was in the left wing. And they had a little wing, like a little up in the nose about this big. You could look through, and I'm looking through, and I'm waving old McCalzick over there. He's waving back at me, and that particular mission, I was flying as Bombardier, and the navigator said, "Hey, I need some help here." I'll run around doing something to help him. Look back in, and an 88 millimeter caught him right in the middle of the, like people say, you can't see these things. Well, I don't know what it was, but I saw it. It went right into that Bombay and blew up, and there was nothing left. I mean, nothing left. And that was like my 5th mission, and to lose your absolute best buddy, well, no, I wasn't, I was left 7th or 8th, after I was flying navigator with this guy. And it really made me think it was worse up there than Pulaski. But Pulaski, it was terrible. It absolutely was terrible because they, of course, they seem to be able to track us better with radar down old Pulaski oil fields, pretty well get our location, and they'd knock out an engine or two, and we'd come off the target, and at Bucharest, the yellow-nosed 109s would come up and just see our guys couldn't keep up with the formation, and so they'd shoot them down. And our co-pilot got checked out in his 25th mission, got his own crew, and he got the same thing happened to him over Pulaski. He got one engine knocked out and then another one, and then the 109s came out and just shot him down. Of course, he didn't lose but one guy, but that's a horrible thing to say. And remained a prisoner of war at Sofia down in Bucharest? No. What's the country down by Greece?
Serbia?
Serbia. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we
stayed down there.
So when you were flying in, you said February to July.
February to July the
44th.
Mm-hmm.
Were fighters still a big problem in general, or did they basically wait for the stragglers and pick on them?
Oh, they'd pick on us anywhere they could. But it was later on, it got to where they'd pick more on the stragglers. Earlier, they'd come in and try to shoot you down, But it was not like everybody. We didn't have any fighter escort. We just didn't have any fighter escort.
That was too far, especially for the longer missions.
That's right. Later on, when they finally got the P-51s with the big tanks, and they could make it up there, and that wasn't until June, late June. Of course, I came home in July, and so you're right. We just didn't have much fighter support.
I do have a.
They always had their fighters up there.
Sure. I do have a question for you about, you were talking about losing your buddies, and this is, I guess, maybe a bit of a tough question, but how did you make it through? Was it, patriotism? Was it guts? Was it religious faith? Because it's tough to see this sort of random act where this plane gets shot down, that guy gets hit with flak, and
you just put it out of your mind. It was a terrible thing when it happened. 2 days later, you're up flying a mission again, and you're losing more people.
And if you dwelled on every one of them, it'd drive you nuts.
You just couldn't do it. Right. And the guys that did had problems. Obviously, they had problems. You just couldn't. It bothered me. I tell you what. Now I really got drunk at night, and I didn't drink. When I lost McCalzick, he was as tall as I was short, going through. So it was obvious, And it's funny how little short guys are friends of big tall guys. Well, we were typical, and when I lost him, it was just like losing my brother. But I couldn't dwell on it. And of course, after having gone through being assigned to a crew that lost their navigator, I darn sure wasn't going to openly dwell on anything.
Sure. Well, I want to hit on a different issue. In terms of when of course, you were flying a lot, so you didn't have a lot of recreation time. But when you were back on the ground, in between missions, what did you do for recreation or fun or?
With me being a bombardier and navigator, I didn't have time to get involved in any. They played a little softball and things like that, some sports, but I didn't have an opportunity because I was preparing for the next mission or getting over the last one. I did get one trip for 3 days to go to Barry. Commander loaned us his Jeep, and we drove up and back, and which I didn't think was anything particularly, and I worried about missing the mission. So, isn't that weird? And
well, you were in high demand because this wing commander, that officer, that pilot, they all wanted you because you could do the navigation and the bombardier.
And it was true. It was a really funny thing, but
did have a couple more questions if I can ask about being a navigator. What did it mean to measure drift? I think that's the term. Measure the drift as a navigator?
Well, if you don't, and of course that's the other thing that the navigator had asked me to do, but if you don't and you drift off course and you don't make the rally point where you're meeting other people, or turning to go onto your IP, and you're 30 or 40 miles off, then you get off on your timing. You're supposed to be at a certain place at a certain time, and if you drift off course, well, there are stories told about our group in the 98th having a situation like this happen, that they drifted off course and got the wrong sally point, or whatever you want to call it, where they were supposed to go together and join up to go on and go over the target. But I'm not being a pilot and not being privy to some of that information, I can't answer the question. I just know it's important, having been a navigator, your drift. And I can tell you another story, which is not that. When I came home, I applied for pilot training and went to pilot training, and I stayed in for 30 years. And some years later, I'm flying freight in South America, and a friend of mine in a Goonie Bird, DC-3, was coming up from Buenos Aires to a place called Cochabamba up in Bolivia. And he got blown off course, and he wasn't paying any attention to his drift, doing plain old pilotage. He got 40 to 50 miles off, went down in the jungle, and it was 2 months before they found him. They didn't have, this system that they have now where a little meter goes off and beep, 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 tells where you are.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's absolutely, and same thing with the bombardier. Good gracious sakes, you've got to know exactly what we call the drift,
What about this term dead reckoning? What did it mean to navigate by dead reckoning?
Dead reckoning is just actually, of course you have a map. And you go ahead and plan out your route from this point to that point. You take this particular course. You're going to head into the wind so many degrees because it's blowing. All this is computed in dead reckoning from this point to that point. Dead reckoning is not using the ground. In other words, you take off from this point, I always use the ground, but you take from this point to that point, you don't have to look at the ground. You're supposed to go from Chicago to New York City, and you're dead reckoning from here to there, and you've already computed in all the winds and everything else that you have. Okay?
Rather than using landmarks or rivers or
you're
things of that.
using landmarks.
All right.
You're dead reckoning. And that's pilotage. And then celestial, of course, that's another thing. Celestial navigator, you use the stars or the moon or the sun. Okay? There's another story about Panama. I hate to bring it up to when we're talking about Italy, but I'm a pilot down there in the Goonie Bird, just lost his friend, and that's made me think, whoa, winds got him, blew him off, and he didn't realize it, and he ran out of gas. I went over to rescue, and I'd been a navigator in Celestial. I went over to check me out of Bendage coffee grinder and had him check me all out and give me all the logs and everything. Got out in the backyard 2 nights and got myself checked out. From then on, I carried that sextant with me on my rest of my missions around South America. Let me tell you, I knew about any drift. I'd advanced those sun lines, and I knew where I was. Even got to one night I stayed down in Santiago, Chile long enough to be able to shoot the Southern Cross. which is something that most navigators in the north end of the country never got to shoot the Southern Cross. Isn't that fantastic? Well, anyway, another story.
No, this is very interesting. I want to, if I can, I want to switch to your bombardier side of your experiences. Did you inspect the bombs before takeoff?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we had to set them. You know,
So the armament personnel, the grounds person who's armed, are going to load them in, lock them in,
they're
or
gonna load them in. Yeah. And they, lots of times armament people did set, you know, because we were supposed to set them at a certain, or they'd go off so many feet from the ground, or penetrate the ground, you know, or whatever. And so all 20 bombs might be set that way. But if something happened and we didn't drop them on a particular target, then we had to go back in and reset them. They had a little fan on them that would blow them in and go off when they're supposed to. You know. Pretty elementary.
and then you used the Norden bomb site.
Use
Correct.
the Norden bomb site, yeah.
How did that work? How did the Norden, or I guess another way to ask it is, as you neared your target, you basically took over with the autopilot.
Oh,
and flew
absolutely.
The flame
You know,
last
when you
couple-
hit to what they call the initial point, and then you turned on, then the pilot turned the airplane over to you, and you were flying it with the Norden bomb sight, you know. And you could turn it, you know, and you'd set your drift in, and you cross trail, and
Can you run me through about the last couple of minutes as you come into target? You're gonna be setting your drift and the cross trail.
that's right. And you've got your, you know, you're just like shooting a rifle, you know, where you have your cross wires, and you line her up on the target, and you can see her coming right down the dadblame thing. Then what you do, because you've got a computer, what am I trying to say?
Gyroscope.
A gyroscope, yeah, gyro in there. So you can adjust it, and you put those crosshairs on that target, okay? And you set it up to where you don't, and then it will slowly, you know, will move as you move towards it, you know, and then it'll get down to a certain point, and then you lock it all in right there, and it stays right there, and then you flip on your. It's been so many years. Anyway, you have your switches for your bomb racks, you know, and because you don't flick them on right away. You get right down just before you're ready to let them go. That's when you do, when you flip your in other words, can you reach it? This is 100 years ago. Anyway, you make them come alive, because they're really
Activate them.
activate them. Yes, and. This bomb site's working. You've got it all set up, and you've got your drift set in, your cross trail all set in, and that cotton picking crosshair stays right on that target right as you're coming up on it. Then you've got it marked down here, and when it hits that mark, it releases your bombs. Now, over there, a lot of the bombardiers drop their bombs on the lead bombardier. You know, when he dropped his, they dropped theirs. I always set my sight up, you know, always set it up, everything, set it up. But what if something were to happen to him, you know?
Well, yeah, the first plane gets knocked out.
Absolutely.
The other guy, the next
set
one
it up
needs to come
every
up.
time, you know. And I did sometimes drop on him, you know. But I think you got better coverage if you did it yourself, you know, and you dropped your own bomb sights when you were supposed to on that target, because you were briefed just as well as the lead bombardier, you know. Of course, there was questions. Some outfits didn't like for you to do that. Of course, ours didn't mind. I don't recollect in my squadron anybody ever been chewed out for dropping their own bombs.
Sure, sure.
As far as the navigator was concerned, you know, every navigator computed, because they had to, because you didn't know when you were going to be coming back by yourself. When you lost out of the formation, you were coming back by yourself.
Of course.
And so they all had to be ready to come. They all had to, everything on their charts had to be ready to go from any position.
of course, you're coming into doing your bomb run. You're, you're flying the plane, and of course, you got the flak coming all over you too, because that's when they hit you with the flak.
That's
You know,
right.
the fighters would lay off, because they know you're coming in level. You're coming in formation. You're not going to take evasive action. You're going to come in. That's when the flak's going to jump you on top of everything else.
Absolutely.
And you're right up there in the nose of the plane, flying through the flak.
And when you were in the old D models, when we got over there, we brought a H model over, which they promptly took away from us, gave to the old timers, which is okay, and gave us an old D Dog from Africa. And of course, it has the cage in front that you can just see everything for miles. And it was the funniest thing. My last mission, I didn't even realize we still had one or two of them left, and we drew one. And I'm looking up at the cotton picking ME-262 coming at me, out of the greenhouse, because normally you have your turret, your nose turret is in the way, and you don't have very much room down here to look out for the bombardier. Yeah.
And now you just got the D model with the single 50 caliber out the front.
Caliber, 150 caliber out the front, yeah.
To deal with that 262 coming up here, coming in on you, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them didn't even have the 50 caliber in the nose. As I remember there towards the end, I think they did take it out of the nose. Yeah.
Got another couple of questions for
It's
you,
okay,
and then
whatever.
we will. Then I'll give you a chance to make your closing statement, if you want to call it that.
Whatever.
Back on the ground, was discipline very tough on the ground? Did you have officers that demanded to be saluted, and regulation stuff? Was it very tough?
I never saw that over there. I saw the one, I'm sure, that makes you ask the question about England, where the crew on the B-17, and they were, and also they got to where they got horsey with each other, like the pilot and co-pilot. I never saw that. I never saw that. Of course, we didn't have it on our crew, and we knew lots of other crews, because we'd go visit the people we went to school with, and of course the pilots, co-pilots would too. And I guess the best way to put it, and it's kind of an old country expression, we knew our place. Really, worry about it. I knew I was a lieutenant,
Well,
and my tail gunner knew he was a staff sergeant, but he still was my best buddy, that I had over there.
Well, that's the thing. You have the four officers, the four lieutenants, or the four officers, and then you had 6 senior non-coms. But once you're up there, you're all got to work together. You're all part of the team that has to work together.
That's right, and on most crews, and I think I can say that without exception, on most crews, the senior NCO was our engineer, and he was usually older than our pilot, so he was shown respect. But you never had any trouble with those old senior NCOs. Boy,
Well, you paid attention, and they knew
just
their
really,
business.
Absolutely.
They knew their business, and it's part of the team.
Yeah, we called him Pop, and he was Pop to us too.
Sure.
But we didn't respect our pilot, and what he was a great pilot.
I had read in the Stephen Ambrose book about McGovern's outfit, where McGovern's 2021, and his Pop in his ship was 32 or something.
Yeah.
And, but they all just got to trust each other, and that was part of the part of the sort of band of brothers, the camaraderie, the very, very close cohesion.
And I am sincere in saying I just didn't see it. And I visited 2 or 3 of the other groups, and I didn't see it there either. That may have occurred some places. I didn't see it.
All right, a couple more questions here. Did you? I guess you didn't have a lot of time to write letters home, but did you receive some letters?
I did. I wrote letters, and my wife still got them to this day.
Outstanding.
I tried to write her between every mission if I could, or
And what sort of things did you say to each other? Was it?
I told her I loved her.
Well, that's an important thing. And what did she write to you? Did she kind of give you the, kind of the stuff going on at home, the kind of day-to-day things?
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of keep your mind off what's really going on. But that mundane stuff, that stuff about the weather or about the flowers blooming, that's real important. Remind you of home.
Absolutely.
And my last question. this is something I ask everybody, whether it's the soldiers. I'm doing interviews with the Big Red One, 1st Infantry Division that went into Omaha. I've done some interviews with some Marines and so on. I ask everybody, soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, do you consider yourself to be a quote-unquote hero for what you did?
No, no more than any of my friends, you know. But I don't.
Just trying to survive, just trying to do your job, get home.
Yeah. I'm kind of like John W. Oliver Jr., but I was born Jack Oliver, and I still am Jack Oliver. I've done a lot of things that I'm proud of. I've done a few things I'm not proud of, but I just don't know what being a hero is.
Well, I asked that because, in 2007, the word hero is just thrown around. It's almost meaningless. Who are the real heroes, you know? And so and time after time, the members of your generation, the World War II, the greatest generation of all, said, well, I was just doing my job. I just wanted to get home alive. I know I'm not a hero. And
probably true. One of my heroes is McCalzick, when I watched him get it, and our co-pilot.
Sure. Well, we're almost done. Do you have anything you want to add? Do you have any? This is your chance.
I would like to say something. Of course, it was a privilege to have been a part of it and go over there, and to have been in the Army Air Corps. We were Army Air Corps, and it was just fantastic. I got back home and I applied for pilot training, and by George, the Army kept their word, and they did send me to pilot training because they had said they would. Those of us had give us an opportunity when we came back, and we went. Did go to pilot training, and in advanced, I got to fly P-51s. I was one of the first 10 guys to get to fly the P-80. You notice I'm saying P because the Army, we're pursuit. Air Force, you're fighter. And I spent 5 years Army Air Corps, got a regular Army commission in my last year with them. I don't know why I did, because I'd picked up another year of credit for college, but normally they didn't pass out second lieutenant regular armies to just anybody, but I guess possibly because I had 3 ratings, bombardier, navigator, and pilot, and I had 50 missions, and maybe having 2 Purple Hearts, and a few things like that might have helped a little bit. I was so proud, and I'm still proud.
Excellent. Well, that's it. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.